what are the things that I like to do and what are the things I do well? And what are the things that if I had a intern or if I had an assistant, I would offload? And then seek ways of automating those types of things. Seek ways of clearing up that work through various acts of automation so you can do what you enjoy or you can do what you need to be doing more. I mean, my dream would be that we automate enough of the paperwork or the administrivia of product management so we can actually talk to more people.
Welcome to Productside Stories, the podcast where we reveal the very real and raw lessons learned from product leaders and thinkers all over the world. I'm your host, Rina Alexin, CEO of Productside. Let's dive into today's episode. I have the utmost pleasure of speaking with none other than Dean Peters, a principal consultant and trainer here with us at Productside. Dean, why don't you introduce yourself to our audience?
Yeah, I've been with Productside for about 2 years, actually almost 2 years exactly. We're coming up on that. I know it feels longer for some. Before that, I did 20 years of product management in hopes of, fulfilling my need to become a recovering software engineer, where I was doing a lot of basically integration of hardware to software. And there is a secret past life we might get into later on in the podcast. It is the worst kept secret on the internet. So.
Is that how you got into product management?
I actually got into product management because as I was doing more software engineering, I found myself more attracted to the why and the who and less about the how. And it's not that the how didn't thrill me, but it was thrilling me less than the who and the how. And it was actually when I was at a company called Westat where we were looking at the nation's health through a huge health survey. I was the fortunate lead engineer who got to integrate all the specimen collection hardware and take the data and push it up to the cloud. And so as we were doing that, and I was getting a wide variety of opinions from various people here, I realized that we don't know what we're doing and why. Now, as I kept pressing into this, I finally had someone who was in marketing pull me aside and say, like, you might want to consider this product management thing. And I didn't know a whole lot about it then. I'm like, well, why is that? And the guy's name was George. He was like, well, because that's pretty much what you're doing these days here. So you might as well make a living from it. Just finishing up my master's, made some explorations there, and the rest is history. Next job, I jump over it. So I tell people I didn't come in through the back door or the front door. I came in through the side door. I just happened to be, working on the lawn, and someone pulled me in saying, no, you're doing this better. Come on in and do this.
Well, actually, Dean, I think, in talking with everyone, that really is the front door. Nobody gets a straight path to product management. Most of them find their calling being pulled into it. And now we're seeing that as well, right? There are just so many opportunities for product managers to shape the future of their companies. And we're seeing quite a big shift in the market with AI. And
yeah.
you know as well as I do that a lot of companies, they don't really know what to do with this technology yet.
Hey, it's interesting. They don't know what to do with the technology. They don't know what to do with the people. I mean, this as well as I do. I get to walk into entire rooms of data scientists who a week before someone walked in and was like, you're a product manager, and everyone poof, the fairy dust, the unicorn dust is spread, and everyone is now a product manager. And these poor data scientists and data engineers who've had a lifetime of training on killing ambiguity and working with the data now have to become product people. So yeah, we're seeing that both in some confusion on not what's possible anymore, but what's profitable. And we're seeing some confusion there on, okay, what does it mean to be a product manager in 2024 or 2025 now that this disruptive technology has sort of tipped everything sideways?
So we talk a lot about the role of product manager, and that is being redefined. And I think that's a good thing, right? I think the product manager, the reason why we have such trouble defining the role of product managers, it really depends on the context that they're playing in. And with the context changing, it makes sense for the role to change. Can you maybe talk about some of the key aspects of the role that you think are currently in flux?
Yeah, and I think just to broaden that out, part of this isn't just a redefinition of the role of the product manager, but it's the role of their product, the organization, and the role of their team is changing. All these things are changing all at once. So that has a huge impact on the product manager. It has an impact on them on, how they to stop thinking about what's possible and to start thinking about is what's profitable. In other words, how do I, get past some of the arguments of like what we can do? And then how do we understand how to realize how AI's full potential can help create a lot of delightful value to a lot of customers? That's also good for the business.
So, what I'm hearing from you is, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm misunderstanding, but from what's possible, meaning is the thing that we're trying to accomplish feasible to now is it valuable?
To a degree. In other words, I don't know. Last year when generative AI, AI has been around for forever, and I'm older than dirt, and I've seen its progression. And with the generative AI coming on the scene, it made it ubiquitous. It made it affordable. It made it accessible. And so we saw a lot of energy in 2013 saying, well, what can we do with this? What's possible for this?
Mm.
Now we're starting to see that sort of second, getting past what's possible to what's profitable. How do we make a business out of this? How do we make a business? How do we nourish our business model, or how do we optimize our operational model? So now we're starting to see the conversation shift. And I think this is where a lot of product people might be getting lost, either because they've been put in there because they came out of a technical background or a data background, or you have persons who come in more from the MBA track who don't have any understanding of the technology or a nascent understanding of it and feel a bit overwhelmed. Where do I start? How do I get this thing started? How much of this do I need to know? So there's confusion at a lot of different levels here. What does it mean to be a product manager in 2024? I don't want to use the term, what does it mean to be an AI product manager? Because quite frankly, everyone's got to become an AI product manager if they want to, stay employed in this field.
Okay, so let's start there. So let's take the idea of a product manager who does not have any technical background, and
Right.
they're seeing out in the news, okay, my expectations are going to change. I'm going to be responsible for a roadmap that at some point will include some amount of AI on it. Uh,
Right.
how where do I start? Where do I start learning?
It's an interesting narrative here because the first thing, regardless of what their background is, and regardless of if the hippo's running and saying, "Hey, put AI on our product tomorrow," and then they go, "Oh no, make that happen yesterday," or they have what I call the smoke jumpers dilemma. They get loaded up with a bunch of equipment, they get put in a nice big plane, the next thing you know, they get pushed out, and they descend into a smoking fire, and they got to realize, all right, no, I got to keep from burning up, and then I got to coordinate with my team. So in the panic of all that I've seen with some of the conversations I've had with a lot of product people, it's stay calm and focus on the problem space. I mean, just imagine that big sign, that big red sign you would see in the UK. It says, keep calm and focus on the problem space. I think if we can keep our wits about us there, then things start falling in place. And it's not just me. I've heard a few other podcasts and done some other reading on the topic there. It's, hey, let's understand their pains, gains, and jobs to be done. I mean, it's basic product management. Now, this is where when I'm teaching people who are, converted engineers or converted data scientists or, or converted software programmers, this is where we have to teach them to get more in tune with the market and the customer here. So they understand, let's understand where we think we're going to win and play. Now, you notice the big thing is we haven't gotten into the conversation of how it works. It's great to know how it works. It's great to know how all this technology to understand. Yeah, we're working in narrow AI, but I'm building a product for when AGI finally hits the street after Sam Altman, hits his vision here. Or yeah, we're dealing with tasks here, but I'm banking on autonomous AI. So it's great to know the how, but that's not what we need to know first. We still need to know some of the basics of product management. We still have to get back in touch with who we're doing it for and why. And then once we've got that under control, then we can start standing on the shoulders of giants. Then we can start looking around at other AI plays that have happened over the years and say, you know what? You know, I'm thinking of having algorithmic management in place here. Let me see what Uber's doing with its drivers. Or I'm looking at creating great decision makers out in the field. Let me do something like what Precision Lender did with bank loans. So at that point, they can start seeing how problems are solved and then work with their engineering teams, then work with their data science teams to sit there and shape and scaffold the how. So I think if most people take that approach, they're going to keep themselves out of hot water. Well, we all know what happens. The hippo runs in, or or my favorite, the seagull manager. I actually had this happen, not an AI, but a senior VP of technology who had been with the company for 15 years. They'd come up through as an engineer, starting as a college intern and worked their way up the program. Ran into our planning session one day. Hey, you don't have to work on this big workflow system here. I wrote for some code for you over the weekend. And I'm hearing some instances of that now. Hey, I modeled this thing using ChatGPT here. Put this in our product. It's the same conversation, just different players. So again, how do we help get through some of those negotiations there? How do we help these product managers then start? How do we get them to start winning on their big wins through a series of tiny bets?
Yeah, Dean, I want to dive into this a little bit because I think you're right. I think with any kind of disruptive technology, there are leaders at these companies who are essentially pressured to somehow provide a roadmap to their leaders that include some of this technology. And they might
Yep.
not totally understand it. They might not totally understand the costs, the risks associated with it. But they do know that Wall Street currently is betting on AI. And so valuations are going to go up. So
Right.
how
Yeah.
do you navigate that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
again, I don't think the hippos and the rhinos and the what do you call it, seagull managers are being jerks. I think they're getting downward pressure on like, hey, our brand needs AI. And now the question is, do we just go ahead and sprinkle it on like Parmesan cheese on our pizza and use hope as a strategy? Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of failures over the next year in a couple of different ways. Um, so I get this pause moment sometimes when I talk about, hey, what are our customers using, or what are your users using in terms of analogous solutions or adjacent solutions? And that happens in the optimal class. It happens in the digital class. It happens in the agile class. Everyone just sort of looks at me like, what do you mean by that? And so that when we teach, the AI, it's like stand on the shoulders of giants. If you go back and look, you'll see similar problems have been resolved through various acts of AI. It may not be generative AI. It could be that generative is going to be a better way to solve it in 2025. But the point is that by learning from that, then you can start building your experiments and learning your way into a better winning play there.
I think you're right. I mean, we know AI has been around for a long time. It's just that it's become, as you're saying, more accessible. I mean,
Yeah.
when was the first time you published an AI algorithm?
Yeah. Like I said, I'm older than dirt, and I'll be glad to arm wrestle Jeff Patton, who says he's older than dirt. I still think I win on that. My first AI algorithm was published in 1987. It was nascent. I really didn't realize I was doing AI at the time. I only found out a few months later because it was within a music composition program back then known as Cakewalk. I was one of its beta testers. And then owner Greg Hendershot says, hey, Dean, I want to add a Lisp language and add some smarts to our program here. He goes, I know you're an engineer. You want to write some, code for us that we might be able to use when we actually go to market with this. I'm like, yeah, I think we can. One of the problems I had was with music captured in a digital sense. Sometimes it sounded robotic. All the notes hit at the same time, all the velocities, all the volumes, everything just sort of, it's like it sounded like a machine had done it. So I wrote a little, I think, and this is where it was funny. I wrote a little program in this Lisp language, a little symbolic program here that basically took the learning from my orchestration class and baked that in so it would take the note and say, what instrument is this? Where is it at in the music here? What are some of the chordal progressions here? And are we going to come in a little early or late for this flute? Are we going to come in a little early or late for this
Mm.
violin? And are we going to hit it hard or are we going to hit it soft? So I put it out there. And again, it was rules based, deterministic, very nascent. All right, very, very like I said, early, very crude version of AI. But I didn't realize that until it wasn't. Well, first of all, half the music community hated it, so I knew I was onto something. Oh, you're doing this, you're taking. But I didn't realize that the computer science group, half the people hated it, saying, "Oh, this is going to take our job." And that's what made me aware that, oh, wait, you've just stumbled in or came in through the side door of AI. That got me thinking, like, well, if we can do this, we can do this for other things. I started actually baking that into some of the software that I was building at my places of work. Once I discussed, sort of said, like, hey, I didn't know we could mimic or imitate the human mind here based off of data or patterns. How cool is that? So started getting into that. So that was sort of my first entry there. I can quit AI anytime I want, but as I tell my therapist, I'm just not giving it up at this time.
Well, to your point then, it's been around for a very long time, and there
Yeah.
are out in the wild, there are many examples of successful AI plays. And so when you're a product manager and you're not quite sure where to start, I think you're right. I think that is a really good place to start, is just to look at what's out there.
Yeah.
And I think you have a really good framework for how to think about AI plays. Do you want to maybe share that?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, are you going after something strategic or tactical? And are you going at it from the system point of view or the process point of view or the human point of view? So, for example, with a lot of this automation we see, right? For specific tasks, right? That's a tactical play for a particular task, and so that's where we see a lot of automation. So, if you're looking to take individual tasks, if you're looking to go ahead and automate that, there are some companies that have done a pretty good job at automating individual tasks. There's some companies that have done a really good job with looking at larger workflows. We see some of the work that happens on factory floors. We see some of the predictive analytics that we see there helping govern observability patterns. And so you see that in things like our automated drivers, our automated cars here, the fact that they're self-driving because they're looking at a larger picture, not just a singular task. And then it could be that we want to assist that individual user, right? Do we want to help them generate a blog post here? Do we want to help them create an image here? And so you see that personalized customer experience there. And then finally, it's that augmented intelligence, which is sort of my favorite playing field, where it becomes that. I hate this term because not Google, Microsoft calling it a co-pilot here, and I always called it a coach. It's sort of like that. In American football, you got the coach up there, way up in the skybox, looking down with the binoculars, then reading to the quarterback. Look, you got 3 different plays you can run on this defense. You're the human in the loop with your feet on the ground. You pick the best play at the moment because I'm sure the quarterback's looking at where number 55 is and doesn't want to have a career-ending injury, and you make that call at the last responsible second with the assistance of that AI. I feel like that's where the most exciting part is. I think that is where we're going to see a lot of operational improvement for product managers as well.
Yeah, and this is, I think, similar to I don't want to call it fear, but some of the issues you may have had at the beginning when you were talking about the scientists and the musicians. I think
Yeah.
this is the field where people are getting a bit nervous around, is AI going to replace me? And with product managers, it's the same, right? It's like, how do you make sure that the AI is not running your job? Instead, you are leveraging it to do your job better.
Yeah, and I think as product managers, we're going to have to realize that some parts of our job are going to get automated away. The more tactical parts of our job, we're going to see those moving away. In 2015, I came out with a funny little O'Reilly book cover called Jira Slinging Ticket Monkey. And it was sort of my railing back at the product owner, product manager, who all they were doing was just cranking out work to keep the team busy, which we know is not good product management, let alone product ownership. So now I feel like in fact, I've shown this a few of my classes, if you only focus on the tactical portions, how to do a canvas correctly, how to do a framework, you're probably going to be out of a job. And if not out of a job, you're going to be outcompeted by a product manager who knows how to use the technology to get better results, how they can actually use those canvases and templates to create great conversations around strategic intents as opposed to just getting the work done.
I think that there's always been in the product management community just this whole mountain of work that a product manager is expected to do,
Right.
right? It's not just writing all those documents; it's also talking to the customers, collecting all that data, analyzing it. And
Right.
so, what I'm hearing from you, it's there's that strategic point, that human point that now the product manager should have more time to do by automating some of the tasks.
Exactly right here. What you look at, I mean, I've talked to a couple of people here, and they're like, "Well, how do I get started with this? How do we get going with this?" I said, "Well, first of all, think about it just from your own operational model, your personal operational model here. What are the things that I like to do, and what are the things I do well, and what are the things that if I had a intern or if I had an assistant, I would offload?" And then seek ways of automating those types of things. Seek ways of clearing up that work through various acts of automation so you can do what you enjoy or you can do what you need to be doing more. I mean, my dream would be that we automate enough of the paperwork or the administrivia of product management so we can actually talk to more people. Uh, it always frustrates me when I have conversations with people at meetups, with product managers or at various meetups or other types of conversations. I'm like, hey, what are you working on here? Oh, we're doing AI to optimize this process. And say, hey, tell me what type of conversations you're having with the chief operating officer or the general manager. And they look at me like, what? I'm like, well, hold on. You're optimizing. You're making an optimization play, and you haven't talked to the COO or the GM. You haven't talked to the Office of Change Management yet? And then you sort of look at me and sort of wilt a little bit. I'm not trying to be a jerk, but that's exactly what they should be doing. And AI should be able to clear the path so they can have those conversations.
Yeah, I definitely think that AI is not going to replace that human interaction piece. I even saw early days of Gen AI, there was a company that tried to create AI assistant for gathering customer feedback, where they
Yeah.
created these personas. And you could basically, in talking to the generative AI, you can get a interview with a persona. But then the funny part for me was then they asked the community for feedback on their tool, because I'm like, why don't you just use your own tool to get AI feedback?
Exactly. And well, I mean, on one hand, I respect that because they're making a synthetic data play, which is a big play in the healthcare space. On the other hand, I agree with you. It's at some point, you got to reach back and say, all right, is this for real? When I show, in fact, I was just teaching a class and we were having a conversation over being a tactical product manager versus strategic. So I took their case study, I ran it through some of our plays and our playbook here, and I said, look how quickly you can generate and populate these. I said, now should these be used as a source of truth? No, but you can start conversations from the middle instead of from the beginning. You can start conversations with conversation starters and with things to get people in the room thinking about the right thing. As long as you're transparent about it, number one, as I tell people there, and not treat it like a source of truth, but as a conversation starter, which any canvas or template should be a conversational centerpiece anyway. So all we're seeing is, by the way, you don't have to go from a zero start or an empty customer circle exercise here. Now you can pre-populate it and say, hey, I pre-populated this based off of some of the problems we're looking at here. Let's nudge this to perfection, which I think is a more productive way of working here. But again, we're using the AI to help get the product managers into the right behaviors and around the right conversations, as opposed to, oh crap, now I got to sit there and hammer out all these user stories with a Mike Cohn a use case statement and a Gherkin like acceptance criteria. Yeah, you could, or you could just generate them and then just quickly edit them to perfection here. Let's get you talking to the actual customers and the pains they're feeling.
So, what you're describing right now is just one way in which generative AI specifically is changing the role of the product manager
Yeah,
and helping them, right?
yeah,
And helping them do the more strategic work versus doing this tactical writing, filling out documents.
yeah.
Now, I want to go back to something I think that you alluded to, is that the role of the product manager is going to change with AI, and more product managers are going to be asked to understand how they can provide better value to their customers by leveraging this technology. Now, for the product managers who have this task, sometimes AI is not is not necessarily the answer.
Right,
How do
right.
they devise experiments to help them understand whether or not AI is part of the solution?
Yeah, it's interesting here because tactically, when you get smoke jumped, or when you get parachuted in, or your the hippo visits you, what is your current experimentation game? When I was at a Primo, I met with a quartet. It used to be called the product trio, but I added a fourth person. That was the data scientist, who was the fourth person, a lead engineer, and a person from our design group. And every week we would meet on a Monday to figure out what tiny acts of discovery we could run to validate the work we were going to do about a month from now. And we would basically, the rules were, you can start the test on Monday, but you better be able to speak to the results on Friday. So we had to keep these tests very, very, very small. Well, how do you do that then with AI? So again, part of that is, if you use it every day in every way that you can, you start learning how you can write use AI to help you with some of these experiments. I don't have a problem with generating some synthetic data just to see if my model falls out, stands up or falls over sideways here. I don't have a problem with somebody having that synthetic conversation, but yeah, you got to bring the humans in the room. Okay, so part of it's getting into that experimentation type of a stance in that motion here, and it's usually better with that personal board of directors, or that having your product trio or product quartet, and doing that on a frequent basis here. The other thing is, why don't you quickly do like an AI skills audit here, right? Think about what you can do, think about what the systems can do, and just do a quick audit there, and see that. And then, see what areas of your roadmap you can possibly address with that. Look at what similar or analogous or adjacent parties have done in a similar space here, and experiment your way. See if the orange is worth the squeeze. But again, just use this as a way to augment what should already be a good practice of experimentation.
And for product leaders, what advice do you have when they are coaching their product managers?
First of all, I would guide them away from getting lost in the technology. In fact, I'd almost sit there and challenge them, saying, by the way, when you do get challenged from engineering or data science here, I want you to have a buy versus build mentality. We've seen quite a bit of organizations, I think it was Bloomberg, who wrote this bespoke language model here on their financial data here. And I think they spent about $10 million from what I read. And then they ran it against ChatGPT-4. ChatGPT-4 gave them better results. So there's $10 million, Now, it's Bloomberg, so I don't feel so bad about it. But so first thing is, let's not reinvent the wheel, right? Let's be a little bit scrappy here. The other thing is, broaden those strategic dialogues. Don't just talk to the user. Again, has anyone had a conversation with the change management office? Oh, have you had a conversation with your client's security and compliance group? What are their current rules around AI? All right. And then look at the types of things in terms of operational model here. Look at the type of things where the shadow AI is happening. There's a lot of, if you go out and look shadow AI, you'll see some research that a lot of people are using generative AI at places where it's been prohibited. And I'd be real curious to study, what is it that you feel, what is it so important that you're getting out of AI that you're willing to use it in a point where it risks your job, but you feel it's more worth it there? Because I would imagine there's some hidden gold in them Dar Hills.
Okay, now I need to check that out. That is I have
right,
not heard.
right. Where
Yes.
can we have an amnesty and say, look, we want to know the areas you're doing. So let's give you an anonymous way of saying where and when are you using shadow AI, and maybe we can get some ideas of, okay, we need to figure this out, because otherwise you're going to establish these governance frameworks here, which are going to be myopic or blinded to this, and then the surprise happens.
Yeah, I feel that in our country, right, with the way back when with the internet, nobody really knew what to do, and it's kind of happening right now as well.
Right.
That there's so much innovation, I think, happening at the fringes. That's quite interesting.
Yeah.
I don't think we've quite figured out how to integrate that with what our companies are trying to do, because there's a lot of risk and unknown about this sector.
Oh, yeah. I mean, one of the things, if I'm a leader and I'm teaching my team, is, by the way, make sure you don't get blindsided. well, from external forces here. We teach that in our class. We've misappropriated the Pastel framework to say what do I need to act on, and what external factors do I need to act on, and what external factors do I need to put some proactive telemetry on, which was not the original purpose of Pastel, but you need to keep an eye on the political terrain. You need to understand what's happening out there economically. You need to make sure that technological changes don't make you obsolete yesterday. So again, those are types of thinking that a lot of product managers aren't doing right now because they haven't had to. But AI changes that game here. And I think back to your other questions here is like, as a leader, I'm going to have basically say, look, where are you going to play and where are you going to win in this AI game here? Where are you going to position yourself? Channel your best April Dunford if you have to, but figure out where you're going to play and where you're going to win.
Yeah, I think we keep coming back to it, Dean, is that at the core of this new technology, it's just basic product management skills. But it comes down to good discovery. It comes down to knowing your customers and really understanding, articulating your value. So it's just what product managers are supposed to be doing all along.
Right. And it being outcome obsessed and being strategically focused, and I think what the ugly fact in the room is those who have been making a living of what Marty Kagan has recently called fake product management, those persons who have been making a living playing the tactical game, that game's going to be up pretty shortly. I think once we get a grip on what these autonomous agents can do, we're gonna be a little bit shocked at just how far it can take us. I keep hearing like, well, it'll never replace this, it'll never replace that, and like I tell people, I'm older than dirt. Don't ever think, don't ever underestimate that there, okay? Because I've been able to prove just through various sessions that I've done online and webinars where I've been able to take things from pretty far from the original concept all the way down to user stories in Jira that were as good as anybody else who could just sling tickets.
So I know that listening to that or hearing that probably makes a lot of people nervous, but I usually say if something's making me nervous and there's some truth to that, I'd rather investigate it because it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So how do I make the most of it? So where is this going? So for new product managers that are, considering the career, this career may change. What advice do you have for them?
So again, the first thing is just remain calm and focus on the problem space. That's the first thing. Now once you've done that, use AI in every day and every way. For example, I know you saw I put up a post there when I was teaching a client in Germany. I said, hey, I have no clue which trains to take, so I'm there on the plane just saying, hey, I was actually pitting Claude Pro against GPT Plus against Gemini on which one could give me the best route and the best train. By the way, GPT Plus actually gave me the correct route. From Frankfurt to Heidelberg, and then Claude got me from the train station to the hotel better than the others. But again, just using it or simple things like that, or we're having a conversation over dinner, and I'll fire up Copilot and say, hey, let's look at this from this point of view. We were at the baseball game. My wife and I were at a Durham's bowl game here. We were sitting here saying, hey, I think I was curious about the rarity of a particular play we saw because we saw someone trying to reach first on a passed ball. And my wife wasn't aware of the rules. So I actually had Copilot explain it to someone who actually knows hockey better than baseball. And Copilot did a good job there.
Well, Dean, this has been such a great conversation. How can people find you after they hear this podcast?
So the advantage of being older than dirt is LinkedIn, IN/Dean Peters, or Twitter /Dean Peters, or any of those /Dean. Yeah, you're going to probably find me as the early adopter to all those. So not a hard place to find. And I love to connect to people and hear what's working and what's not.
And another way that you can be connected to Dean Peters is by taking one of our classes, AI Innovation for Product Managers. It covers all of what we just talked about today, from how to use discovery practices to get to the right problem to solve with AI as a solution. So thank you all so much for tuning into another great episode. Thank you, Dean, for being such a great guest.
Thanks so much. And I only mentioned the dangerous animals of product management once. So,
Thank you for tuning into Productside Stories. I hope today's insights inspire you and propel your product journey forward. Remember, every challenge is a lesson waiting to be learned. And you can also visit us at productside.com for more free resources like webinars, templates, playbooks, and other product wisdom repackaged for you. I'm Rina Alexin, and until next time, keep innovating, keep leading, and keep creating stories worth sharing.